4 games into the season, let's have some fun with some absurdly early stats. One great one kind of bad one, and one that, I don't know, we'll see how it works out right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. It's right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, and I got you every day with a free podcast. It's fresh, it's daily, and this week it is 6 times because on Saturday night, the Celtics play the Brooklyn Nets, and I'll give you a bonus post-game podcast for that. So make sure you're subscribed. The show is everywhere podcasts exist. The show is on YouTube. Hop into the comment section. Let me know what you think about the games, what you think about what I'm saying, and all of that good stuff. I'm John Karalis. Played a long time ago. Now my job is to cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. And today we're going over some absurdly early stats because it's absolutely stupid to do stats after 4 games. But we're going to do it anyway because we're not bright people. It's me. It's Tom Westerholm. How you doing, Tom?
Anytime that you can introduce a show with something about how it's dumb to be doing something, you got to have me on the show.
That's it.
I'm here. Yeah.
That's you are our dumb beat correspondent.
That's
I guess where the comma goes in that could be like that's careful of the punctuation on that one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tom, you are at worst marginally intelligent.
That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me.
Yeah, I know. Later on, here, people watching on the YouTube page, absurdly early stats, the 3 Ps, passes, pull-ups, and post-ups. The passes, kind of interesting. I'm not sure about that. The pull-ups, I don't like, but let's start with the old post-ups. Tom, the post-ups, this is my favorite. I could not be happier to start a season because when posting up is the big conversation, this is my wheelhouse. This is just a big fat meatball over the plate. I love it. Before we put the stats up, what are you making? Just bird's eye view. What are you making of the Celtics post ups?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would tell you is be careful what you wish for, because last year we were right in my wheelhouse, right, with all the 3-pointers, and everybody had something to say about how the Celtics were shooting too many 3-pointers. Everybody was just ripping on Mazzulla Ball for all the 3-pointers. So I think it's your turn here to experience what it's like. But unfortunately, it's going really well. The post-ups are crushing. The Celtics have a lot of guys who can post up very effectively, especially with the emergence of Tatum in that role. Early impressions. I mean, I think it really helps when you've got like the combination of being able to space the floor all the way around the key, right, with all your different position players, and then have one guy who can just go in there and bully somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, that's tough. That's tough. Especially when that guy is usually somebody like Tatum, who's quite good at passing out of it. It's like, that's a tough offense right there, right unto itself. So,
yeah. Today's show brought to you by PrizePicks, by the way, the easiest, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Maybe PrizePicks should do over, under, or more or less, I should say, on a number of post-ups. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA, all lowercase, for a first deposit match of up to $100. Let's look at these post-up statistics. If you're on YouTube, they're up on the screen. But those of you listening, I will read it out loud. Kristaps Porzingis, 1.46 points per possession on a post-up, a frequency of 18.6% of the time posting up. And then Jayson Tatum. So Porzingis is second. Tatum is 5th in the NBA. 1.36 points per possession, 14.4% frequency. Both of those points per possession numbers are incredible. That compare it to last year, where Porzingis was 1.18 points per possession and a 16.6% frequency, and Tatum was 1.22 points per possession and 5.1% frequency. 5.1. He has basically tripled his frequency in the post. Thank you, Sam Cassell. Thank you, Joe Mazzulla, for coming to that conclusion and teaching this guy how to do it.
And before we move off those numbers, we should note that those are like last year's numbers, very good for post up. Like those
Very
were
good.
really good numbers already. So I mean, I think there's certainly something of a like a slightly unsustainable spike here in terms of efficiency. But last year's numbers, this year's numbers, viewed in tandem, quite impressive.
So everything's going to tail off, right? This is just, it's not to sit there and say that, oh my God, they're getting like almost 1.5 points per possession on post ups. Just go, you don't want to spam post ups all game long. Like the frequency is good. And I think the reason to kind of highlight this stat is not for second and fifth and all that stuff. It's the fact that it's effective, right? So far, it's effective over 4 games. The frequency is good. I like where they are frequency wise because it's not overbearing. Porzingis doing it 19% of the time, Tatum doing it 14.5% of the time. That's fine. Those two guys, I've been in arguments, man, with people around the league. I talked to a scout from another team. I talked to an executive from another team, and they were like, go ahead, post up all you want. And my argument has always been like, people say the same thing about mid-range jumpers, but no one's going to tell KD to take all of the mid-range jumpers that he wants, because for Kevin Durant, that's effective. And my point with the Celtics, for all of the people on other teams, is that Tatum and Porzingis are effective. And to a lesser degree, Holiday will do it every once in a while. Brown will do it every once in a while. But it's Tatum and Porzingis that are going to do it the most, because Porzingis is just gigantic, and it's an easy way to score when you need a bucket. You're screwed. They're on a run or a late game situation, and you need a bucket. Porzingis in the post can do that. Tatum, because he can pass out of that.
Yeah.
Not just score the 1.36 points per possession, but pass out of that. That's basically a paint touch. And so he is a very effective person in that. I love these numbers. I want these numbers to stay. Wherever they land in the hierarchy of the NBA is fine. But that frequency number, the points, that will generate a good points per possession, no matter where that ends up falling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and especially the way they're getting their post ups is so, I would say, efficient, so effective. Like, you've got big mismatches, right? Like, you're creating these mismatches. And then, I mean, like, how many times have we seen Porzingis in the post, and like the guy who's guarding him is like 6'6", or is like, just so much smaller than him? How many times have we seen Tatum backing somebody down who's like, these 12 pounds of muscle that Tatum just put on? Like, this guy, the guy that Tatum is backing down, did not put on 12 pounds of muscle. Or like, and I'm not even just talking about like McConnell, right? Like, I'm not even just talking about TJ McConnell. It's like Kelly Oubre, right? Like, we're seeing him bully guys. And I think that's a big part of it too. Like, to your point, against the scout and the exec, it really depends. Like, who are you posting up against? Because sure, if you're going center versus center, big lumbering big man versus big lumbering big man post ups,
right.
Yeah, that's not how the game's played anymore. But if you've got a guy like Tatum who can do 8 different things at any given time, and who, packed on all this muscle, and who's, got a quick first step, and, smooth with the ball and good at getting to the rim, yeah, then that's a completely different conversation, I think. And especially to your point, when he can kick the ball out to any number of 3-point shooters who are all red hot right now because they're wide open, because everybody, immediately vacuumed straight into Tatum as soon as he got in the ball in the post. So, yeah, I mean, situationally, this has to be one of the friendliest, one of the friendliest situations for post ups that could possibly exist, is when you've got like this collection of personnel. It really makes a lot of sense for this team.
And this is leading to 5.5 more post-ups overall per game for the Celtics. And look, the Celtics, they create advantages with their post-ups. You kind of are forced to double. You're forced to react. And I was watching the Pacers game again, and that first quarter was just we'll get to this in the next segment. It was just like pull-ups and just one-on-one play all over the place, because Boston's just, every matchup they had, the Celtic was better than the guy defending him.
Right.
And it was just a barrage of them just being better than their opponent. And it was just one-on-one. Now, if you try to double, there were a couple instances where they tried to double Jayson and it just became, oh yeah, here's Derek White wide open. Oh yeah, here's, Drew Holiday wide open. So you put those guys in against Washington, Porzingis gets the ball in the post and they have to double them because they're so small.
Yeah.
And they lose Jayson Tatum in the corner. They just left Jayson Tatum in the corner and Porzingis found him. That's the power of the post up. And that's why I want to see it continue.
And the power of the Celtics top six.
And the power of the Celtics top six.
Good Lord.
Now, with all of that power, there's, a downside to that power, a downside to the talent. Is there a downside to the talent, John? Yes, there is. I just did your part for you.
Is there a downside to the power, John?
Yes, there is, Tom. Pull up jump shots, which we'll cover that in just a second. First, today's show is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy done the right way, daily fantasy the way it's supposed to be, because it's you and you pick 2 to 6 players and they have the PrizePicks projections and you go more or less than those projections. And if you hit on all 6, you can get up to 25 times your money. So right away, boom, it's not you against algorithms. It's not you against sharks out there that do this for a living. You want to have fun. This is how you do it. But on top of that, let's go deeper into why PrizePicks is awesome. Basketball season is here. Basketball season is here. Football season is here. Why not combine the two? It's like the Reese's peanut butter cup of daily fantasy. Pick Jayson Tatum and pick Travis Kelce and get a combo, a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made plus receptions. That's a fun thing that they do in their specials league. You can play against famous people in their promo tab of the app and view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. And just to quell your fears of like, oh, my guy got hurt, they have a reboot policy. So your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets hurt. And for football and basketball games, if you have a player who leaves in the first half, doesn't return in the second half, that player's rebooted. No one else. PrizePicks is the only one in daily fantasy sports that has injury insurance. So check it out. I love PrizePicks. People who've heard this and have tried it have come to me and said they love PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. You're going to get a 100% instant deposit match for your first deposit of up to $100. Use the code LockedOnNBA, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. You get a first deposit match up to $100. Thank you for listening to Locked On Celtics. Thank you for making it your first listen every day. Again, bonus podcast this Saturday night. Tomorrow night, you're getting a bonus post-game podcast. Next week, Friday and Saturday, you're getting bonus podcasts, which means I'm podcasting basically for 14 straight days or something like that. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast. Let's get back into the conversation with Tom Westerholm. Tom, pull-up jumpers. We went from my domain to yours. And pull-up jumpers, well, I mean, you're more of a catch-and-shoot guy.
I can hit them.
You can hit them.
I like a good pull-up, but yeah, at my most effective, I'm, Hauser-esque. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know who loves pull-up jumpers? The Boston Celtics, who love pull-up jumpers. Here's the graphic here on the YouTube page. 13.3 made per game, 29 attempted per game. That is a 47.3% field goal percentage. And when you factor in the three-point shooting, which is almost 8 and almost 17 per game, that's 47.3% from the field. It's actually 46.3% from three. Sorry. And your effective field goal percentage is 61.2. None of this is sustainable. None of this is where it should be. None of it is. But the Celtics love taking these. And, by comparison, last season, they took less than 8 and less than 21. And in three-pointers, they took 4 and almost 12. So the pull-up jumper numbers, Tom, are spiked through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers across the like the problem with doing absurdly early stats when the Celtics just beat a team by 50 is that all the stats are going to be a little high, right?
Yes. That's why it's absurdly early.
That's why it's absurdly early. I think one of the interesting things to me about the pull-up jumpers has been, obviously Tatum is going to take some, and he's going to make some because he's Jayson Tatum, and he's an absurdly effective shooter that way. I've been really interested in Derek White, the way he's shooting them. Like, I mean, yesterday 3 of his 4 made 3-pointers were pull-up jumpers, and part of the concept behind bringing Derek White to Boston was like, okay, this guy's going to get a lot of like really nice spot up opportunities around Jaylen and Jayson. Yesterday Derek White's just like, no, none of that. Like, I'm just a pull up guy now. Yeah, I mean, I think it's twofold, right? I think that a big part of it certainly is unsustainably hot shooting. Is the Celtics just kind of getting on a roll and. We saw it at the beginning of last year as well. They came out of the gate just on firing on all cylinders last year as well. I also think a little bit of it is like, if you look at the types of shots that the Celtics are getting, a lot of the pull-ups aren't terrible looks, right? Like, they're getting a ton of good looks just purely based on the amount of talent that's on the floor around them at any given time. Like, like Derek White is shooting pull-up 3-pointers, and yeah, they're pull-ups, but like, they're open because everybody's stressed out trying to guard everybody else too. Like, these numbers are not sustainable, but I do think that there is like a little bit of like, okay, some of these shots aren't as bad as a pull-up jumper sounds on paper, right? Like, on paper, you're like, oh, you probably could have gotten a more efficient shot than that. But then when you kind of watch them within the flow of the game, it's like, I didn't hate that. That wasn't bad.
The problem is that pull-up jumpers are historically lower percentage shots.
Right.
And I think that we might end up seeing a situation where no one particular Celtic, and I didn't think to look this up, but it's something to track during the season. It might be that no one particular Celtic is going absurdly crazy with his pull-up jumpers, but the combination of Derek White comes down every once in a while and says, hey, I'll pull up, and Holiday will do it. He's certainly going to pull up. Jaylen, absolutely. Tatum, absolutely. I mean,
real quick, Holiday cracks me up because he doesn't seem like the kind of, like, when you watch him play, he's such a good defender, and he's like, kind of a point guardy type. He can play a little bit of other stuff too, but he's a point guardy type. So you don't necessarily expect some of his decision making to, like, you're kind of like, oh wow, that was that was more ambitious than I expected Drew Holiday to shoot. But he's ambitious sometimes.
I'm not gonna make this into a Marcus Smart thing.
But, right. It's not that.
But I'm gonna say that there will be shots that Holiday will take this year that people are gonna be like, oh, okay. But if Marcus Smart took him, they'd be like, are you kidding me? Trade him! Oh my God!
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. But Holiday is also a much better offensive player as far as scoring, and so you earn that. You earn that little bit of extra. But all of these guys that can come down and pull up, and look, off the bench, Peyton Pritchard is not shy. He'll pull. Like, there are plenty of guys on here that'll pull right away. And the Celtics encourage early offense, which means if you're a good shooter and you're coming down and it's the shot, I've had to learn to be okay with this shot. It's get the ball over half court, 18 seconds, 17 seconds, and your defender is retreating and he just dips below that 3-point line. And you're like, well, here it is. Boom. And that might be the best shot that you can get in an entire possession. And I've come to accept that as a philosophy. The way defenses are played nowadays, that could be the best shot you get. A Derek White pull up against a retreating defender, just because it happens at 18. And I'll always say, get it that. Can't you find a pull up jumper somewhere else in the shot clock? Make the defense work. But no, they want to get the percentages out there. It's a math thing. And fine. I've always been bad at math, and that's probably why I hate that shot. So, but I think the pull-up numbers are still going to be higher than last season's attempts, just because they have more guys that will take them. I don't know that any one of those guys is going to be so egregiously like, will you stop taking pull-up jumpers? They're going to take a couple a game, and the cumulative things would be like, wow, the Celtics take a lot, but generally the ones that the guys take, to your point, you're going to be like, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah. And I mean, again, I think that's what happens when you have a lot of really good players, right? Is that it makes all the shots a little bit easier. Same thing with the post ups. It makes the post ups just a little bit easier because it's just harder to defend everything at once.
And to the point I was making yesterday and the point that I made earlier with Tatum, when those 5 starters are on the floor, you cannot double off of any of those guys. Right. So if Holiday takes his guy one-on-one, he knows he's not getting help, because who the hell are you going to help off of when Holiday's driving? Nobody. So if he finds an advantage off the dribble, then he will take it. And I would say most people would say he should take it. And that will bring us to the passes, because the pull-ups and the passes go hand in hand. More pull-ups, I think, mean less assists. And what we're seeing so far is fewer assists. We'll talk about that in just a second. First, today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the #1 sportsbook in America for a reason, because they are going to give you $150 in bonus bets. All you got to do is win a $5 money line bet. So if you're new and you're just trying to figure out, do you want to start getting involved over at FanDuel, this is a great time to do it. You place one $5 money line bet, you win, your team wins, you get $150 in bonus bets. And you can use that anywhere: spreads, player props, over-unders. You get all sorts of different options. The Celtics have been 10 and 11-point favorites on FanDuel in recent games. So it really makes it interesting to say, are the Celtics going to win by 11? And the answer has been, obviously a resounding yes in the last game. Let's see how long they can keep that up. So check it out at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. We just ask you to please gamble responsibly. They have the tools over at FanDuel that you can use to set up and kind of keep yourself in check if you feel like you want to use those. I would encourage using those. Check it out there and have fun gambling responsibly at FanDuel. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out the Locked On NBA podcast. I host it on Wednesdays with Jake Madison of the Locked On Pelicans. And it's a fun way to stay up to date on the entire league. And just a fun conversation. We have rotating hosts all week long. They're all great. So check that out. Let's get Tom here. Tom, the passing, like I said before, is in conjunction with the pull-up jumpers. We're seeing the Celtics assists kind of wane behind it. The passing and just in general, the passing isn't generally leading to the scoring. Here's the graphic on YouTube. This season, 24 assists per game. That's 2.7 assists per game so far, less than last year. They're 18th in the league, where they were 7th last year. And this season, potential assists per game, which is a pass that can lead to a basket that doesn't ultimately. Last season, they were 47.3 potential assists per game. That was 9th in the league. They're at almost 5 full fewer potential assists per game. So 5 less on the potential assists, 2.5. So that's a lot of potential points. If you just look at it in a vacuum, you're like, oh, they're not passing the ball as much. I wonder if the pull-up thing is going to kind of level out a little bit.
Yeah.
And if that does, I think naturally the assists per game will go up. I wonder what the Celtics are going to do about this, if this is a concern, because, I asked Joe Mazzulla before the game yesterday how he feels about the passing. And it was very kind of like, yeah, we're when you have an advantage, you take it and blah, blah, blah. It was nothing definitive. So I am curious to see how this and the pull-up numbers kind of tie together.
Definitely. I mean, I think one kind of interesting thing to watch too is, like, obviously the Celtics have had a really good start to the year in terms of blowing teams out, right? Big part of that has been individual mismatches where the Celtics just get these guys and there's it's like, well, what is this guy supposed to do against Jayson Tatum? He's got nothing for him. What is this guy supposed to do against Kristaps Porzingis? And that can kind of whittle away at assists as well, right? Where if you got a big mismatch, if it's just, you're going to go right at the guy, you're going to take a moment, size him up, take a couple dribbles, maybe get to the rim, whatever. That's going to take an assist away. So I do think when the Celtics like start playing some good teams again, when the Celtics start playing teams that aren't the Pacers without Tyrese Halliburton, and when they start playing teams that aren't the Wizards, like I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it go up a little bit, right? Just because like you're not driving against Jordan Poole. Like if you drive against Jordan Poole, you don't have to pass. You can just go right to the rim and score. So
that's right.
When some of those individual defenders are a little bit better, we might see some of that ball movement again. But again, like not to keep coming back to this, but this team has a lot of really good players. And like last year's team, especially at the start of the year, the ball was just whipping around, right? It was just going inside and then out, kick out, and then work its way all the way around, and then find the open guy in the corner for the other three, like extra passes all over the place. So far this season, we just have not needed to see that yet from the Celtics. So when we do start to need to see it, that'll be when I'm interested to see kind of what these numbers do, and if they do, kind of to your point, if the pull-ups and the assists kind of normalize and meet in the middle a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you're right. This is the one stat where it's that's why I qualified it as like, I don't know what to make of this stat yet.
It's an interesting one. Yeah,
it's an interesting one because you'd think like, wow, so many good players are going to be passing it and it's going to lead to buckets. But your point is a good one. Look, they've played against two bad teams, and I think they had 30 assists against the Wizards anyway, right? So
you might be right, yeah.
And so they will against better competition for sure, against better defenses for sure. You have to work harder to get your points, and there is so much talent. Like when you do
31 assists against the Wizards, yeah,
there you go. When you do go against those teams, then you're going to generally generate, I think, more assists. Now, the beginning, I think, they struggled a little bit to shoot earlier on, and then they've had two games here where it's just been like, oh my God, just torrent, which I think leads to some of the inflated pull-up numbers, right? Like, so and again, it's not necessarily that I'm worried about these particular numbers. It's just, let's look at these data points that we've seen so far and kind of say, interesting. Let's see where this goes. And the pull-ups and passes are so intertwined that there will be a balance one way or the other. Either they'll stay like this, and it's just going to be, this is a team that has a lot of pull-up shooters, and if they're great, then they're great. And if you hit them, you hit them. And or it becomes like the pull-up shooting was just two games where they're just incredibly on fire, unsustainable. Like the more I looked at the Pacers game, I was like, this is just the Pacers are missing everything.
Yeah,
the Celtics are hitting everything, and the Celtics were so good that they it was almost like practice. It was like drills. So it's something to be like, okay, let's keep an eye on that. But absolutely, I should qualify. Maybe I should qualify at the top. None of this is actually concerning to me at all.
Right, or not, both things, right? None of it is like so encouraging. I mean, it's encouraging. None of it is so encouraging that you're like, wow, the Celtics are going to go, like 74-8 and, lose one game en route to the title. But also we're not like, panicking about any of this stuff. It's more just like, it feels like the UConn women's basketball team just played like, I don't know, like South Dakota Tech or something, like that first game of like a college basketball season where like a top team just absolutely just destroys a much lesser opponent. That's kind of what like the Pacers game and the Wizards game. Yeah, listen, I do declare that. I do not think the Celtics are going to go 74-8.
For people who aren't watching on YouTube, I put up a graphic saying breaking Tom Westerholm declares Celtics won't go 74-8. This is why you got to watch the YouTube, because there's visual shenanigans going on here as I derail Tom's train of thought.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that like we're kind of getting like these very early. If it's encouraging because clearly the Celtics are an excellent team. Like the top six is as good as advertised and maybe significantly better. If it's discouraging, but it's not like this team is the be all end all world beater 4 games into the season. If it's
Yeah.
discouraging, it's like, well, there's going to be some equalizing, and we saw the Celtics come out hot next year, but it's also not like everybody needs to panic because this team won't pass to each other. It's like, that's not what's happening here. It's just,
No.
like you said, interesting data points early in the season, kind of a point to build from. Just an interesting point to build from 4 games in.
Yeah, and that's all it is. And whatever it is, and we'll revisit it at some point because that's what we do. But it's always fun. Like it is kind of fun sometimes to look at the small sample size stuff.
Oh yeah,
everybody does it. Like was it Hoop Collective has their small sample size theater? Like they don't do it after 4 games, but I just thought it would be fun, after a couple of blowouts to be like, okay, let's just kind of take a look. And
that's why I dropped in our little document. I dropped the lineup data where we got like in 208 possessions, which is like, if you got to the end of the season and you were like 200 possessions, it'd be like, okay, that's a small sample size, but it's not completely unrepresentative.
Yeah.
Jaylen and Jayson are outscoring. Their lineups are outscoring opponents by 30.3 points per 100 possessions. So, yeah,
that's gonna stick.
That'll stick. That'll do
it. that one declaring. Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown will always outscore their opponents by 30 points when they're on the floor.
Yes.
All right. Fun one here on a Friday. As usual, Tom, always appreciate you. Thanks for hopping on.
Appreciate you, man.
And I always appreciate all of you who listen, who watch, who are, popping it on an audio app and, taking a shower, walking the dogs. If you're in New England, probably out raking leaves for the 80th time because those leaves are just relentless. Why won't they stop falling? Sorry. Whatever you're doing, I appreciate you hopping on here and listening. Watching on YouTube, that's a fun way to enjoy the show because I get to make fun graphics and wear my t-shirts. And so I appreciate you guys doing that as well. And if you're a regular listener, you everydayers who are here with me Monday through Friday and on these bonus podcast days, I would love it if you shared the podcast and told everybody people you don't know, random people you meet on the street, that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.